Welcome back to the Playing Out Loud podcast, and welcome to 2026. Which yeah, we have tiny little. I should have brought sparklers.
Should have brought.
Or like something pom-poms.
Little noisemakers would have been
Yeah,
good
there
for
we go. The little
podcast.
Yeah, that would have been good. Today we are kicking off 2026 with two, I'm going to say, anchors of the strings, because you both play on the low end of side, right? The low strings. We have the wonderful Gary Gatzke and the equally wonderful Dan Jones.
I don't
Welcome.
know if I'm equally wonderful, but thank you.
You are. You're both equally wonderful. You both have really impressive, incredible backgrounds, teaching and playing, and really unique traveling. I feel like, Dan, you've traveled like, how many states you've been in? Like
this
3, 4, 5?
This is state number 4. That I've worked and taught in and played in.
Just making the way through. Maybe you'll head west at some point. I don't know.
I'm hoping this one sticks.
Yeah.
I like it here.
Yeah, we like you. We'll keep you.
Thank you.
And Gary, we're going to get into all of your stuff. So actually, why don't we just launch right in? Gary, you are the Director of Continuing and Community Education at Interlochen Center for the Arts. Little known place around here. And you oversee the Interlochen College of Creative Arts and the Regional Arts Education Initiatives. That's a lot. Can you tell us a little more?
It keeps me busy. We'll put it that way.
It sounds like it does. Your day-to-day is really reaching out to folks that can't maybe come to camp or come to Interlochen directly, right?
It's sort of a two-part position. Much of my time is focused on engaging adult learners. Mm-hmm. So individuals that may have played the viola 50 years ago and want to reintroduce themselves and reignite the passion they had for viola playing by coming back to Interlochen for either our chamber music camp or our string orchestra retreat. So that's just one example of the many adult arts education programs we offer at Interlochen College of Creative Arts. And then the second half of my position is finding creative ways to, while working with a committee and various other departments, are finding creative ways to bring Interlochen out into the community and finding ways to bring the community to Interlochen, especially during the academic year where the weather changes. Mm-hmm. It can be somewhat of a challenge to get individuals who are in the Grand Traverse or Traverse City region in particular come all the way out to Interlochen, maybe when the roads aren't so bad. So we have some creative programming, one of which is our Winterlochen celebration coming up in February.
That's
which is a
fun Winterlochen.
It's really fun. So regardless of your age, kids, is to come to campus and try your hand in some visual arts, some acting, try and conduct an orchestra. I mean, where do you get to do this?
Yeah, especially at such a beautiful campus and just such a beautiful region. And Interlochen you're starting the centennial, right? It's like a 3-year venture, right? So that's a long time to be doing incredible work like that.
So we're going to kick off the centennial for Interlochen starting now in 2026. We'll start with a national tour of the Academy Orchestra and film, new media, dance, other divisions that will be a part of the tour. Mm-hmm. But the main ensemble that will be performing is the orchestra. And those will be performances starting at Interlochen on March 7th. We'll then move on to Detroit to play in Orchestra Hall in Detroit. Wow. Then to Philadelphia at the Kimmel Center or the Marian Anderson. Oh my gosh, I forgot they changed the name.
They did?
Yes. Or at least will be. I mean, Marian Anderson, the first African-American opera singer people forget about. Mm-hmm. But don't forget Marian Anderson. And then off to Boston.
Wow.
So
and in Boston. It'd be great.
In Boston. It's going to be wicked amazing.
I love it. I hope you get some wicked lobster rolls. And I mean, touring, Dan, you could easily join since he's been in 4 states now. So
call me up, sure.
You also have held the principal double bass position with what is now the Traverse City Philharmonic since 2006. You're still in that position?
I am. So, wow, this marks, it will be September of 2026, which will mark my 20-year anniversary as holding principal double bass of the TC Phil.
Wow.
But what we don't see on paper is that I played with the Philharmonic then, Traverse Symphony Orchestra, from 1994 to 1998 while I was in high school. And, it's a time in my life that really, being a student of the Traverse City area public school system, which is fantastic, and then having the opportunity to go to Interlochen Arts Academy, but I still kept active in the Grand Traverse region by performing with the Traverse Symphony Orchestra. And at that time, I guess I was the youngest member in the orchestra at that time, but it was more of a community-esque ensemble. The musicians were still paid, but it wasn't the revered regional orchestra it is today.
Yeah. Wow. That's so in total, what, 24? It'd be 24 years.
Yeah, but I can't. That's too many years for my age. Too many years.
I hope they give you some giant like pin or ribbon or something amazing for you.
Maybe.
Just a gentle plug to the TC Phil here.
Yes.
You're also the principal double bass through the Great Lakes Chamber Orchestra. That's not something I'm particularly familiar with. I've heard the name a couple times now, but can you tell us a little bit more about that orchestra?
Sure. That's an orchestra that I want to say in the late 90s, early 2000s came to be from a group of musicians in consultation and leadership of Matthew Hazelwood, who's a former orchestral director at Interlochen Arts Academy, to bring an orchestra to Emmett County, Charlevoix County, and to have an orchestral presence in that region. Some may know that the Bayview Association has their summertime music programs, which is a multi-decade program and sort of a summer stock, per se, of music and opera. But having a year-round orchestra was something that the region was looking to put together. So under the direction of Matthew Hazelwood, that group really started and grew and grew and grew. And then over time, I was able to go up and be a part of the ensemble, sitting second associate principal. And then the principal at the time decided to retire, and so I moved into the principal position, and I believe that was around 2016.
Okay.
So.
Wow. At this point, I'm just I'm stacking the years of all these different orchestra, and you have a similar story. You've been teaching and different things in this way. So between the two of you, your performance and teaching background is like Mount Everest. It's so impressive.
Well, and it's as a musician, I think you end up either in one place forever, or you end up everywhere. You know, and like a little bit here, a little bit there. You know, you with your fingers in a lot of different pies, or you end up really completely committing to one.
Yeah,
you know,
and you've sort of committed maybe to the northern Michigan, northwest Michigan region.
Yes. However, opportunities arise.
Yeah.
And so last season, I did my first performance with the Detroit Opera.
I was going to say I was going to touch on that.
And I'll do another cycle with them this year.
Wow.
An opera based on Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale.
Oh, I have to see that.
That'll be in early March. So that'll be very exciting. And just being involved outside of Northwest Michigan is kind of exciting, kind of expands. But I've done things, since moving back to Northern Michigan, I should say, from New York, with festivals in New Hampshire. So I've tried to get myself out and about when I can. But having a full-time position, sometimes that's difficult. And you just have to arrange your vacation to make that possible.
Right. Yeah, that's always the trade-off, right? Especially if you love what you're doing in your 9 to 5. And then you're like, well, I want to also go do these other things.
Right.
But, there's a balance to be struck for sure. You've already alluded to this, but you spent some time in New York City because you studied at the Juilliard School, correct?
Correct.
And you completed your Bachelor of Music in 2002, and you got your Master of Music in 2004. Was that all through Juilliard?
It was.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
So how was New York in the early 2000s
oh my
for
gosh.
school?
Well, that was during the Giuliani years.
Yep.
Where, I want to almost say New York was almost like Disney World. Many things had changed. We kind of joke that a lot of the homeless population disappeared, and really the question is where did they go?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not really a joke, but it was a very bright time in New York in the late 90s, early 2000s, until, of course, September 11th of 2001. But it was a good time to be in New York, and I'm glad I was able to do it when I did. But performance opportunities abounding during those 6 years as a student. I did then join Juilliard's development team in development and public affairs.
Wow.
So, being a musician is great, and finding a job is the greatest. But sometimes security and health insurance is a good thing. So I was also being smart in that, if I want to go down this route of, becoming a performer, landing a big job or a semi-big job, I still have to be realistic and have a job that's A, going to pay for rent, and B, health insurance, et cetera, et cetera. So I found myself in the administration with Juilliard, in the alumni office in particular. So my title was so long. It was Development Associate for International Engagement and Alumni Relations. It was something so...
It's like 10 words later.
Yeah, it was...
It's like counting like 8 words.
This is weird for me being like a 23-year-old. But anyway, no, opportunities became available for me to come back to Northwest Michigan, to Traverse City, to be the alumni director for Interlochen Center for the Arts.
Oh, wow.
So I moved back in 2006 and then held the position of Director of Alumni Engagement for Interlochen Center for the Arts from 2006 to 2013.
That's a lot. First off, I can't imagine what that business card looked like with your title. Remember business cards?
Oh, yeah.
Do we remember Rolodexes and all that good stuff?
Oh, of course.
That's incredible. And you've been back in Northern Michigan since.
I have. And my position with Interlochen as the alumni director took me all across the country. So I did a lot of traveling during that time. So I was back in New York probably once every 2 months.
Okay.
But it was great to be in the city and not having to pay rent.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rent. Yeah.
Yes.
Just so much. 60% right of your take home. So... All right, moving on to you, Daniel Jones III. This big, we're talking about long names here.
It's so much. It sounds so much fancier than I actually.
Pinkies
am.
up a little bit here.
Sure,
We should all be having tea at this moment and pinkies up here. So you have been a pretty well-known, I would say, a lot of folks know you, cellist and string educator in this area. You've directed the TC Cello Club, right? Which
yes,
was
I've done.
Also through the TC Phil Sesh, TC Symphony.
I've done 2 out of the 3 seasons that they've run. I directed.
Yeah. Do we know if that's returning? There's
we
about
haven't-
4 million cellos in this
There are so
area,
many cellists in Traverse City. It's amazing. We haven't had the conversation yet.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
Yeah, last year I think we didn't start talking about it until February or March. And so, but I think if there's still interest, I think it's certainly.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
Cello Club. I'm waiting for Viola Club. It'll be 3 of us, but it's fine.
There's more than that. There's plenty of viola players around too.
You teach at Traverse City Central High School.
Yes, I do. I'm the orchestra director at Traverse City Central and by extension also at East Middle School.
Okay.
And this is year 4, and that's what brought me to Traverse City.
Yay.
So I always feel like the guy who, I hear names and like, well, I know half of these people, maybe of the, the people we talk about. I don't know half the people I play with sometimes. But yeah, it's a great place to work. And as we mentioned, I come from out of state and I've taught in very different places. And Traverse City and TCAPS really is a special place for the arts, for music. I really enjoy this program. A lot of fun to work with the kids up here. I'm still kind of adapting to just the enthusiasm in the community for arts in the schools that we have here. And that may sound strange to the locals that's an adaptation, but it really is. I spent I would say a career before coming here. It was an uphill battle. Like having to convince people that this matters, having to convince people that, yes, we deserve funding. We deserve, at times, a classroom, and things like that. And then it feels like I've graduated to a place where everybody's just happy that we're doing this. And I'm honestly 4 years in, still kind of reeling at that. But I wouldn't trade it, for sure.
Yeah. So you got both of your degrees in Ohio.
Yes, I did.
Right? 2 degrees in music and music education.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But you've taught, obviously, in Ohio, North Carolina, and West Virginia, and, of course, Michigan.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Any other states on your bingo card?
The bingo card. At this point, really, no. I'm not looking to leave.
Yeah.
Not to say that in past lives, putting out applications, boy, wouldn't that be interesting to live in Aurora, Colorado, or wherever I had put out for. But no, I do very much like it here.
Yeah. Well, we like having you. As far as, you've performed, obviously big in teaching, but you've also performed through a lot of different things, right? You've done university, community orchestras, and theaters. Mm-hmm. That was when I first met you, as you were in the pit for A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder.
Yes.
How many other shows have you done?
Oh, my goodness. In the 20s, I think.
Wow. That's a lot.
I kind of a funny story. My first pit orchestra that it was right after I graduated at my own high school was Into the Woods. And then the first show that I did when I got to Traverse City is when Traverse City Central did Into the Woods. Oh. And, I got to work with coaching the kids for that and also play in the pit. Quite a challenging cello part for Into the Woods. Well, quite a challenging everything part for that show. But it was a nice kind of bookend for me because that experience, 20, I don't know how many years ago now, doing it at my own high school where the pit orchestra was literally me having just graduated playing cello. We had 2 keyboardists, one of whom was also directing the show. Mm-hmm. We had another student who, let's see, what did he play? He played French horn, clarinet, he had a pocket trumpet, something else. And then when Little Red wasn't on stage, she ran over to the corner and played flute. And then I come up here to Traverse City and do Into the Woods here, and I'm one of, I'm leading this student cello section, and we have 32 people in the pit orchestra, and we have, a director team, and we have, and again, I'm so impressed to be to be doing what I'm doing where I'm doing it.
I'm going to pause for a second. Pocket trumpet. Can you define that for me? Because I'm having a Looney Tunes moment in my head here of a very tiny trumpet.
Basically, yeah. With any brass instrument, the length of the pipe is what matters for the notes that it plays.
Okay.
And you can take a trumpet and just wrap it up tighter, more or less.
Really?
So that it's, not much bigger than your hand.
Really?
And yeah, that's called a pocket trumpet.
Does it play higher notes or like how?
To my limited brass knowledge, it is effectively the same. I'm sure I can hear Thomas Vieira, my colleague in the Central High School band, screaming at me right now with all the difference. He's a trumpet player. But, the kid playing made it work.
Wow. Incredible. Incredible. All right. So you are also part of the National Associate for Music Education or National Association for Music Education?
Yeah, and that's something that's, for those who don't know, it's not very big in Michigan.
Okay.
But for those outside of Michigan, we have an association here called the Michigan School Band and Orchestra Association.
Okay.
Which runs like solo and ensemble contest. What we call in Michigan, large group festival, large group contest in other places. NAFME, National Association for Music Education. The job that MSBOA does in Michigan is generally covered by the state chapters of NAFME and many other states. And so if I wanted to do solo and ensemble, if I wanted to send my kids to All-State, if I wanted to do anything like that, you would be a member of that. And then that would be the organization that would do advocacy and things like that. I've found jobs through NAFME and things like that. So
great.
But there's a small presence of NAFME within TCAPs. I know we have one music teacher who is like our district rep, but it's not so much a Michigan thing as it is in other places.
Gotcha. Interesting. So it sounds like regionally maybe it's different. It's different, like a state different, but also kind of larger.
I've come to learn, and I don't know how deep we want to get into these things, but Michigan is a little bit strange on some of those things.
Okay.
And MSBOA was around first, from what I understand. And please don't quote me on that. Somebody who knows this stuff, who's a historian and all this will know. But from my understanding, MSBOA and MSVMA, Vocal Music Association, kind of set the basics for how that sort of thing works. Okay. And NAFME formed nationally. And then there are state chapters that take over those things in other places.
All right. Wow. Yeah. Well, there's a whole bunch of things I didn't know.
It's a lot. And again, adapting to a new place, you learn these things. So.
Yeah. One of the many interesting things also on your resume is that not only do you play cello, but you also play double bass, violin, and viola.
I play them all to varying degrees of proficiency, but I have performing experience on all of them at least some level. I've done some opera pits at university levels on double bass. Been a long time. It would take me some. I'm looking at Gary, and he's giving me the right. Yeah.
Oh no,
please. My German bow hold is terrible at this point. But I do have performing experience on some of it. Lynn Tobin, who's been a guest on this show before, when I came here and met her, and we started talking about the civic orchestra. I said I play cello. She said, "Well, we have 1,000 cello players." And I said, well, I've done cello and bass in an orchestra. I've kind of always wanted to hit every section. So do you need a violinist? Do you need a violist? And she said, sure. And thank you, Lynn. I've done it. I've played. I've now done first violin, second violin, and viola in the civic orchestra. So I've hit all 5 at this point.
Wow. So bingo.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Actual bingo.
It's pretty cool. I wouldn't. Obviously, when you teach them all.
Yeah.
In public school, you teach all 5, and I can keep up with my 10th grade players,
sure.
on all of them.
Same.
Yeah. And I take some pride in that.
Yeah, I'm proud of you across the table. I'll tell you what.
Thank you. Well, and something that I always advise my students on if they want to do this professionally, if they have any interest at all in playing more than one instrument, is start earlier than I did. I knew the fundamentals, again, enough to teach it. But there are plenty of successful teachers out there who, teach instruments they don't play.
Yeah.
And early in my career, that was me. I was a cellist and I was a bassist. And I got to a point where I was teaching in 5 different school buildings throughout a day.
Wow.
And some of them were, 10 miles apart, and I'd have 20 minutes to get there, and things like that. And, when you're teaching beginning string players, you need to model. You need to model techniques. You need to show them what they're doing. And, I can't pack up my cello from my middle school classroom and drive 10 miles into the auditorium of an elementary school that's still set up from their pageant the night before, and then set up all the chairs, and then unpack my cello, and then, and all that sort of stuff. And it became a practicality issue. I said, I just,
can't.
I can carry a violin, and I can have it, and I can stand in one spot, and I can have it on my shoulder in 30 seconds.
Yep.
And I started seriously practicing violin and viola. I wish I had done that when I was 15 and not 25, But believe it or not, it turns out violin's a lot of fun to play.
Yeah.
And so, I kind of got hooked, and I teach from a violin in the classroom most days. It's a fun instrument to play, of course. I'm happy to have learned it.
I mean, there's a reason that 2/3 of an orchestra is violin.
Well, yeah, so. And funny you bring that up. Right after lockdown ended, I was teaching in Martinsburg, West Virginia at the time, and I had a class of third graders. How cool is that? Third grade beginning players.
Oh,
and
it's a good age.
Yeah, I didn't have any fourth or fifth graders because they would have started during lockdown, and we weren't running elementary strings at the time. And I had maybe a dozen of them. And every single one of them chose violin. And I, 3 or 4 weeks of this, why didn't anybody pick anything else? And finally, I had the thought to ask, because we hadn't been able to do any in-person recruiting that year because of lockdown. We weren't. Okay. They didn't allow us in the district I was in. And literally, I walked in and I said, hey, everybody put your hands up if you chose violin because it's the one you've heard of. And every hand. They had never heard of the viola, cello, or bass.
I hadn't.
Right,
when
exactly.
My cousin played violin. She taught private lessons, and then she also ran an equestrian stables. Two very different things, but I adored her. And so I was like, I'm going to play a string instrument.
Sure.
And then it came and they were show and tell, basically, with string instruments. And I thought the cello was pretty cool, but I was so small. I was like, there's no cello that's my size. And then I heard the viola, and I liked the lower sound. Yeah. I liked the lower. The E string just gets me every time.
Yeah.
When we're tuning, I'm like, there it is, But I think it's common, right?
Absolutely.
Fiddle, violin.
Absolutely. It's the one people have heard of. And I grew up, immersed in the string world. And that it didn't occur to me when I was younger that was not everybody's experience.
Yeah.
Yep. But I think that's really true.
Yeah. So I guess this is a great segue into some questions. We always ask folks that are on here their why. Why did you choose music? Why did you choose the double bass, cello, strings over woods or flauts? We have lots of folks that we know that are musicians around town, teachers, etc. And it's always great to hear their why. So would love to hear, Gary, if you'd like to tell us a little bit about, why the double bass? Why music in general?
Well, oh my goodness, where do I start? Well, I guess I'll start with growing up in Traverse City. I live out on a road just west of town that is incredibly busy now in 2026, but back in the early 80s, it was not so busy. Maybe 5 cars go by a day. Now 5 cars go by every second. And it's funny, I live on the same street that I was born on, essentially. Mm-hmm. Anyway, but my grandfather, who was a transplant from Detroit, was the director of the Detroit Police Department band.
Okay.
In the 50s and the 60s.
Wow.
So in the 70s, he owned a instrument repair shop above the camera shop downtown in Traverse City. So from a musical family per se, though my mother didn't play an instrument, nor did her sister, music was talked about. And it was brass instruments, so a bit different than a string instrument. But in the public school system, I attended Willow Hill Elementary on the west side, and I will never forget the day. It was Dorothy Kunkel, and many people who are of the region, of course, are going to recognize her name, did her presentation of the string instruments in the Willow Hill cafeteria.
Yep.
And, my first instinct was the viola. I know.
Good choice.
Secrets are coming out
Good
today,
choice.
guys. Secrets are coming out. And at the end of the presentation, my friend Patrick and I were at the end of the line, and she had asked us, hey, can you gentlemen help me carry these instruments out to my car? Mm-hmm. And just for some reason, that question of trust made me feel even more like, oh, I really have to try this. So I went home and, at dinner I had mentioned the presentation to my parents, and I would love to try the viola, and they laughed.
Oh no!
They're like, oh, this will make your grandfather happy. It'll be great.
Oh, it was a good laugh. Good. I was worried.
It was a good laugh. It was a good laugh. So, turns out my grandfather was like, okay. Well, we're not going to rent. We're going to buy you something. Oh. So he was unsuccessful in finding a viola, but he found a violin.
Okay.
And so I was going to play the violin. So in 5th grade, Willow Hill, violin. under Dorothy Kunkel. It was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 6th grade, I was like, I'd really like the cello. So in 6th grade, I switched to the cello under Karen Morrell. And that was fantastic. And then at the time, elementary schools then matriculated into what we had junior highs at the time. Now they're middle schools. And so then once I got to the 7th grade at Traverse City West Junior High under Kathy Sivitz, was to play the bass. The double basses were available for us to try. So that's when I made the switch. However, I kept both the cello and the bass going through junior high. And then into high school at Traverse City Central, where Dan is teaching. So again, under Dorothy Kunkel, I then played violin in the concert orchestra as concertmaster violinist, and then double bassist in the larger orchestra. Okay. And so I did that for 3 years. And of course, much of it was to avoid having to do gym class.
As usual.
As usual.
That's what I did. I did two choirs.
Though,
I did 2 choirs. I get it.
Yep.
Wasn't an option for me, but I'm so jealous of the kids here that can make that choice. Like, oh my gosh.
But, just hearing Dan talk today, I'm like, oh, Dan, like you have no idea the number of incredible musicians that have gone through that room that you teach in. I can think of, of some of our musicians that are in major symphony orchestras from Philadelphia to Utah Symphony to the Cleveland Orchestra that all learned in that classroom.
Yeah.
And you were mentioning how the community is so supportive of the arts. Like, Traverse City should be proud of that. Yeah. And as much as we, budget cuts happen here and there and funding gets pushed around, I think we in this region should really advocate for continued support for budgetary dollars for the arts because it really does matter and it really does work. So just hearing Dan talk about like, well, I'm conducting here and we got the pit and everything. I was like, we did that and oh my gosh. And all of these people I'm thinking that were in the pit when I did Redagore, Gilbert and Sullivan play back in 1994, 95, like the people that are in major arts organizations now that were in that pit or even on stage. I'm like, holy moly, like so much growth can blossom from the seeds that we plant. And this community is a really fertile soil.
Absolutely.
For that.
I feel very similar about my experience with choir because the amount of people that I did the first Les Mis with back in, I don't know, was that 2002, something like that, and West Side Story and Aida and stuff like that, who have gone on and are professional opera singers or have sang with the Met in New York or Boston, went to conservatories and all this stuff. It's like, that's just not everywhere.
No,
it's not.
It's not in larger cities. It's not necessarily in Grand Rapids. It's not necessarily exclusive to major metro markets. We are, as you have mentioned, Dan, like we are abundant in
we
all
are,
of that.
and it's so interesting to come in from the outside, and those names are on the wall, in my classroom, and I spend, your name's on the wall, and it's something that I really have so much respect for, and I really value being a part of that. To me, community history matters, on any level, but obviously we're in the arts. And I spend, the few down moments I get, I do spend a fair amount of time looking at those names on the wall. Like, I wonder who these people are, but I see Gary Gatzke, I see Kim Teach out on that wall. These are people I know, and it's big shoes to fill for sure. But it's exciting to me. My origins, I came from Salina, Ohio, which is a town that's been around a long time, has a lot of history and all that sort of stuff, but not in the arts, and I found as I was teaching other places, for a while I taught in a school that was less than 10 years old. Like they had built that district, and there's no history there. There's no sense of identity. There's nothing there, and building from scratch. And I found that so different and, in a way sad.
Yeah.
And, it gives me a lot of conflicting emotions, I'm very glad to be a part of this. I'm very glad to have a role in leading this, but also, do it justice.
No. I mean, clearly we're in good hands with Dan and his leadership now. It's sort of like cool. Like so many years later, it's great to hear to sit next to you and just know like, oh, we're in good hands. Like it continues.
Well, thank you so much.
It's great.
I appreciate that.
And I had my first orchestra teacher was Mrs. Copperthwaite.
Yes.
And then Mrs. Sivitz. And then for choir, it was Mr. Larimer, Russ Larimer.
Of course.
But I believe Mrs. Copperthwaite still plays with the
She does.
with the fill, right?
She does.
I just love it. I love the longevity as well of musicians in this town. It's just not something I'm like, it's wonderful to continue to meet folks who, whether they're starting out, they're kind of on the younger side and figuring out how to, do a bunch of gigs around town and make ends meet, or, that balancing act to those who are professionally teaching and everything else, to retirees. Like when you're really in love with the performing arts and musicians especially, like you do it till you absolutely can't.
Right.
You really do. You really
And
really
I can't say that about a lot of other careers, honestly.
Right.
I'm trying to think of a lot of other trades that have the longevity and the joy and the happiness that comes with it, and the lack of stress, right?
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Well, sure. Probably different types of stress, though, right? I think about, what doctors or attorneys, those professionals endure. That's a high level of stress at any given moment. And I'm sure they love what they do, but when they retire, they retire.
Right.
It's a risk reward, It's the day-to-day operation, or, worrying about budget cuts and those things, or well, why are my numbers lower this year than I predicted, or whatever.
Right.
I mean, that is very stressful, and coming from the reason that I moved out of Ohio was, I got my teaching certification right at a time when Ohio was cutting all those orchestra programs throughout the state, and what was left, who am I, fresh out of college, going to compete with somebody who's been doing it 20 years? And so there were no jobs.
Yeah.
And I spent years, I stayed in grad school while putting out applications until I couldn't afford that anymore. And then I decided to leave the state, it was that kind of thing. And coming from that kind of world, that's always in the back of my mind. Like, how strong is this program? How much more advocacy can I do?
Right.
Where are the danger signs? Maybe I worry about that too much. I don't know. but there's that stress. But the other side of it is that the actual job that I do is so fulfilling.
Yeah.
Like I'm worried about this so that I can continue spending 6-7 hours a day playing violins with children who are there because they want to be there. And it doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah.
And it's funny you bring that up. These kids want to be there. They want to learn. They want to grow. And, there may be times or rehearsals where you're not getting the sense that that's the case.
Absolutely.
Where there may be an attitude that is present. And what I find is that you got to find a way to meet them at a certain level.
Yeah.
And find a way to flip that attitude upside down in a fun and engaging and appealing way. And I feel like there was an example of that this past semester where someone, in a group just wasn't having it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, what am I going to do to fix this? And my friends, kind of a funny story, conductors from Curtis would come up to New York from Philadelphia to see Otto Werner Mueller, who was the orchestral director at the Juilliard School, do performances in Avery Fisher Hall, which is the home of the New York Philharmonic. It's now David Geffen Hall. But for some reason, the conductors picked me out because of my focus when I play.
Oh.
And it was this running joke of the conductors, both at Juilliard and Curtis. They're like, "Oh, Gary's on. Is he on? Oh, he's on.
He's
on." So, and then
like
of course,
switch.
that all trickled back to me, and I was embarrassed. But I was like, "No, I might as well own it. If I'm so focused, laser focused, then it'll be great."
Yeah.
So I used that story in a sense of like, "Do you want to see my focus face?"
Yeah.
And so I do the focus face, and then they start laughing, and it sort of breaks the
Yeah.
And they're like, "Okay," and I'm like, "Well, use that focus face. You try it now." And they're like, "Oh, okay," and it's fun.
I saw Gary focus face.
Yes,
I was about to say
Well,
that
I think
I
also
see that every time you play.
There's focus face, and then I think I also used the example when you were in the room of the teacher face.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
It's not disappointed teacher face, but almost disappointed teacher face. But yeah, it stops traffic, let me tell you.
It stops traffic.
For sure.
When we were going over the King of the Mountain Hall, is that the correct?
Hall of Mountain King.
Yeah. Wow, just backwards. But we were talking about the gal that was sort of cueing us in for this chamber. And she's in high school, right? She's still very young. But she's sitting next to, all of her friends in this chamber. And so I think mentally you're in this place of like, gotta be cool in front of your friends. It's like a very subconscious, sometimes very conscious thing. And it's this it can be a gritty song, when you can really, I felt like I needed to really get into it, trying to get her to just be a little like, like get into it with a little like gruff, and she'd do it, and then she'd see one of her friends just lose it. So we'd just spend a few minutes, 5 or so minutes, just kind of laughing, and it made me think about my acting background. I didn't want to overstep any boundaries or anything. I was like, well, it's probably good to. In a chamber environment, maybe it's like musical improv in a sense, right?
It really
where
is. Yeah.
you have to cue off each other, and it's a very subconscious yes and, which is the key phrase in improv and things like that. And when you have a leader, you're following them, but if you're not supposed to laugh, don't laugh. Like, what is that thing you do, and what character are they into, and are you playing off that? And that's how I view more intimate, I guess I'd say, ensembles in that sense. Is that
you're right? It's playing off each other's energy, and then having your leader kind of ignite that energy level or display of it. Whether it's happy or sad or scary. And I think I used the term, it was like, be mean, Ellie, be mean. And she's like, I can't be mean.
She can't be mean. There's not a mean bone in her
maybe
body.
Not mean, but, just be kind of jokingly ferocious. Like you're a troll in the fjords and, but no.
Well, and
Ellie's like, I can't do it.
But she did great. She did fantastic.
She's like, I can be a rose with a few thorns, and that's about it.
That's pretty good. Well, one of the things that I think goes along with that is teaching kids or teaching musicians, whoever, just not to fear failure. And, not that it's fun to fail. It can be, but in rehearsal, in particular, or wherever, but just getting used to the idea of, if you don't ever take a risk in the way you portray something, and I do think a lot of the times about music as playing a character. If you don't ever take any risks, you're not going to get any interesting music, and so I try to model that in my teaching. I let my kids see me make mistakes. I play instruments that I don't play all that well in front of the kids, and play wrong notes and play out of tune sometimes and things like that. Maybe more often than sometimes, but that's for other people to decide. But I think that's so important as a musician, is to be tolerant of failure, to be tolerant of, I tried something and it didn't work, I'm going to try something else. And that's like acting 101. Right?
Yeah.
So it very much is true. And I think particularly for students, for middle school, those teenage years where the last thing you want is for anybody to see a single blemish in anything that you're doing, to teach them how to own those blemishes, to own that this didn't work that time, or this was a little too much, or I scratched on that note, oh well. One of my favorite examples of that was with the Philharmonic Orchestra at Central High School a couple of years ago. We did an arrangement of the Strauss Emperor Waltzes, which came off lovely. And got to the very end. It ends in C major, and I had them on the concert. I had them, pushing their sound, pushing so hard that they dug in so hard on the very last note. I heard it in the recording that they played hard enough that they collectively went sharp by almost a half step, and we ended on a C sharp.
Oh,
and if the New York Philharmonic did that, I would criticize it. Right, but
it is the New York Philharmonic.
Right, but when the Central High School underline boldface orchestra does that, like, look how much sound they are pulling out of these violas and cellos and things, and as a violist, if you play your C string hard enough, you hear the pitch go up.
Yep.
And that's all they were doing, is they were just giving me what I asked for. They were playing with every ounce of energy they had, and I was proud of that wrong note.
Yeah.
I really, really was, and that's what I wanted the kids to feel.
One of my favorite vocal directors for a musical, Gentleman's Guide, was Chad. And we had such a smaller ensemble, but we were all strong singers. And as we were going through these chords for more of the chorus stuff, and some of us ended up singing that backstage and some were on stage, they're very dynamic. They're very complex. Some of the most complex ensemble music I've ever heard. And as we were learning those, he would say, I need you to sing louder so I can hear if you're singing the wrong note.
Yeah.
Which is just clear and precise and perfect, because you're like, yeah, I'd like to know that too. If I'm singing the wrong, because you're hearing these clashes, all these notes, and you're like, oh, it's like a barbershop quartet got really sad.
Yeah.
But that was kind of the backbone of some of the music. But I love that it was sort of the encouragement of like, it's okay to fail.
Oh, yeah.
But let's do it together so we can fix it, kind of thing.
It's that idea of fail fast.
Yes.
And learn from it.
Right.
It was that, fail often, fail hard kind of thing. That's why I always tell folks who say that when they learn that I've done stand-up comedy, like, oh my gosh, that's absolutely terrifying, blah, 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 all this stuff. I'm like, it's the best part, though, is going up. And 80% of your career as a stand-up comedian is bombing.
Yeah.
It's just, get used to it, kids.
Well, learning how to recover from it, that's funny. It just is funny,
Yeah.
You tell the joke wrong and you have to dig back up from it. That is just funny.
I think Lynn was telling us a story about playing cello once, or maybe she was conducting, and someone's bow just flew across the stage. And how they handled it was just, wow, it was just when they had a moment, they went and picked it up and came back and started playing. And it was like, yep, the show must go on.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Right?
Well, it's sort of that idea if you have a soloist, typically maybe a violin soloist, if they break a string or if their bow explodes where the hair pops out of the plug lets loose or something, it's the duty of the concertmaster to hand their instrument or bow over immediately.
Yeah.
Or if that happens without a soloist and the concertmaster breaks a string or, then the associate principal hands their instrument over.
Wow. I love that. I didn't know that.
That's true. Oh, I use videos of that as a teaching tool with my kids too. Again,
so what happens with viola if my C string breaks? Am I just SOL?
In the world of viola jokes.
Right,
yeah.
Take the C string off and promote you a second violin.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Or the orchestra wins a Grammy.
That's right.
So sorry.
I don't want anybody listening to think that I don't love the viola. I absolutely adore the instrument.
No,
the jokes are funny.
It's too funny. I was so shocked because when I did orchestra growing up, we would have at most 3 cellos, and we got lucky once with a double bass. And then violas, there was 6 of us, and then 20 or something violins. They started multiplying overnight. And I was very competitive, so I typically sat first chair. But I remember in high school, we had 2 cellists, and they were constantly competing for first chair. So then going from that to the civic, both the chamber and the orchestra, it was just like a million cellos.
There are so many
I was like,
cellos.
I am not used to this. And of course, and then like the opposite problem was like, I think there's 6 violas today. Nope, 5. Just kidding.
Yeah.
And then in chambers, like, hi, I'm the only one. Am I doing this right?
You are.
But it was just so great. And the kids are so malleable. They're timid still, but they're very malleable and friendly. And I'm impressed, honestly, with a lot of the youth that come in that I've seen, at least through the TC Fel, has been very impressive. And I don't know what schools they're in, so I'll just give Dan all the credit at this point. They could come from West too. I don't know, but maybe a mix.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a mix. And now you've got me thinking about, I see sitting here, I know this kid, I know that kid. Oh, that's so-and-so.
Yeah.
But without getting into numbers, I'm pretty happy that Central, my side of town is being represented more in civic than it was kind of when I got here. And I love community orchestras. I always have. My heart in music really is with that level, the people who are just there for the love of it. And so I always try my best to play, in whatever's available in community orchestras. And I remember there were, I think, 2 kids from my program in the civic orchestra my first year. And I said, well, I'll play. And maybe that'll bring some kids. And I don't know if it was me playing that brought them in, but it was really nice to see as I was, playing more, the next season there were 3. And then the next season there were like 8 from Central. And just to see that start to grow again. I find it so important for young musicians to get a diversity of experiences. I really, really do. That's probably the most important thing to me for kids who are middle high school age, because, they hear the same thing from me every day for weeks on end. And, whether it's them saying, Mr. Jones, what's he talking about? I'm not going to, or if it's just, I don't say it with the same phrasing that, some other conductor does, or, my beat pattern is hard for the kid sitting here to see, but in this group, he's over here and he can, whatever it is, just to have that reinforcement. You learn so much more working with 2 or 3 different conductors in one session than you do from the same person in a semester. Yeah. Sometimes,
Yeah.
No matter who it is.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about all the success, I would say, in general, that's thriving here in town from youth through adult. If you could pick one thing, I mean, we'll just chat about this briefly, but if you could pick one thing that you think is most challenging in your particular area, whether that's continuing education, maybe Gary, or just orchestra, teaching, anything like that, if there's one thing that you could pick that you think is a big challenge or a challenge you are experiencing in those areas, what might that be?
Well, I think it could be access, and it could be that access is challenging because of a lack of advocacy. And I'm thinking more nationally than just in our region, is that for those of us who have gone through the program and experienced the arts, whether it be vocal, theatrical, music, instrumental, etc., that there are so many benefits to having that as a part of your educational journey. And why it's not a part of the conversation first and foremost at the state and national levels, always being funded. And I think, now we've dealt with most recently is just, the lack of or the disassembling of the National Endowment of the Arts, the holding of funds through the state for educational purposes through the Michigan Arts and Culture Council, and just situations where you would think, well, this should be a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Why would you cut funding here? Why would you do that? Why are we not finding creative ways to share the arts more? And so I would say that is probably my number one, even though it's maybe not as concrete and as well explained at this very moment. I think that's my biggest challenge is, how can we be better advocates? How can we be better at helping those who are in charge to make the right decisions?
Yeah. Absolutely. Access and advocacy are really the foundation to the other building blocks that create successful programs and successful people, not in a monetary way, but just like they are themselves authentically, truly, and that's rooted in all these unique areas supported by the arts, etc.
Right.
Anything you would add to that?
Yeah, I would. First of all, I agree entirely.
Yeah.
That's such a big part of the conversation. And I think what I am seeing just directly in the schools I work in right now is there's a cultural battle going on in that big voice from outside that is saying, this isn't worth your time. This isn't worth your investment, is getting louder.
Sad.
And, right?
Gary is shaking his fists quite literally.
It's I don't.
Yeah.
And again, I said earlier, I've taught in a lot of places where some big things really did go wrong. And I grew up in a program that 2 years after I graduated high school, that orchestra didn't exist anymore. And things like that. And so I may be a little bit hyper aware of those signs. And I hope that that's what I'm seeing. I don't think Traverse City is going to let go of the arts.
No. No.
But I do start to see that those voices are getting louder. And that shows up in so many places. It shows up in the kids. It shows up in the kids. How invested are they in what we're doing? How many risks are they willing to take? Are they willing to put in that extra time? Are they willing to make commitments? And that's not what it was even a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I would love to be incorrect about that. but that is a challenge that I feel like I'm facing like immediately is how do I go out and change that narrative? How do I go out and say, no, like this really is worth it. This really is, I know it's more difficult than maybe everything else you do. 12-year-old kid, or whatever age, but how do we make them see the value in it?
Yeah.
And that's a harder thing to do today than it was to do in 2023 or 2020 or 2015. It has seemed to continue to get more difficult as time's gone on.
Just the arts in general, it's just a part of the recipe for a successful society.
It is.
And a quality of life that I would think that most people would want to live. If you look at the European model and how so much of the arts is state funded. / government funded, it's for the people. It's an important part of life. And, in the U.S., we've had national support, we've had state support, and a lot of it, just by our model, comes from individuals who are contributors to an orchestra, to a school, to help make the arts possible, or to an art gallery. I should not forget our art galleries and museums.
Absolutely.
So, it's important to do that. And, my biggest wish and dream would be to win the Powerball so that I can be a philanthropist and give it all away.
Yep.
Right.
The legacy, I think, that performing arts folks, we don't strive to be billionaires. We strive to give that kind of, if we ran into the magic lottery ticket, we strive to support our communities. That's typically the kind of folks that I talk with about that. And honestly, I hope that the podcast will help inspire and these stories, people will hear it and hear the success and the love that you all have and the joy that you guys bring to the table in the day-to-day, because your stories are part of the fabric of the community.
Sure.
And they make the community better. And so, we want to highlight those and we hope people hear more of this and share it with their students and friends and colleagues. And in small towns too, we saw a lot last year with public radio being defunded and really small stations that were really bringing an important part of news or music to those communities went away. And so we do have a battle. We have a cultural battle. We have a lot of different things to fight, in that access and advocacy is imperative. And all we can do is control what we can do, right? We can just step up and be the best teacher we can on a Monday morning.
Yeah.
And on a Tuesday night with kids that are, I'm a little tired, Gary. But awesome. I wanted to wrap up here with our classic rapid fire.
Ooh.
Okay.
So I prefaced y'all about this ahead of time. So this is the first rapid fire of 2026. The questions are the same for each of you. I will ask the first question, and I'll just start with you, Gary, and then go to Daniel, and we'll just kind of see if we can do it rapidly.
I'll try.
Or what's the Italian word for that you would have in music as rapid?
Rapido.
Oh, rapido.
Wow,
Presto.
I could have guessed that one. I could have totally guessed that one. Okay, all right, first question. Favorite instrument?
Bassoon.
I love it.
Viola.
All right. Favorite solo piece to play?
Col Nidre.
Okay.
Good choice. I've always been a Leonard Bernstein fan, and I've been playing a simple song from Mass every place I get a chance to.
Love it.
Love it.
Dream music to play, whether you've played it or would like to play it someday.
Ein Heldenleben, Strauss.
Ooh.
I'd like another chance at Scheherazade. I once did it from the 12th seat in a cello section on one rehearsal, and that wasn't
Enough.
All
right. Favorite performance ritual, so like backstage or getting ready for a performance.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Rosny, my bow.
There you go.
Favorite. I think the thing that gives me the most confidence is I'm not just saying this because I have a bunch of students, spending like 45 minutes warming up on scales before a big show.
Nice.
Literally. If I can show up
Foundational.
that early and play scales for that long,
Great.
I feel so much better going into it.
Favorite thing to do in Michigan outside of the performing arts?
Oh my goodness. Exploring Detroit at the moment.
Love it. Love it. And Daniel?
I fell in love with Sault Ste. Marie long before I even considered moving to Michigan. I don't know what it was, but every chance I get to go up there and hang out, I just love it there.
Both peninsulas well represented in those answers. Thank you both so much for being on. This was great. We could have been here at least another hour and grabbed some snacks and kept going. So thank you both so much. Thank you for being our first guests here in 2026.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. Happy to come back anytime.
Yeah.